Good evening and welcome to the Pompey Politics Podcast, the podcast where we explore matters of local, national, and international importance in a calm, measured, and reasonable way to get to the heart of the matter. I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sainsbury, and apologies for our late start. There's some sort of technical gremlin, so do let us know in the comments if you're experiencing anything. We had a bit of an issue with some echo or some clapback. I'm going to give some links in the chat for being able to watch the show on either landscape or portrait, depending on which is your pleasure. So here we are. It's a Sunday evening, and we still got the same Prime Minister.
Well, indeed, yes. And what a week it's been. Our first ever mini pod, the PPPP. That might be one too many P's. Minister's Questions, where we enjoyed the cut and the thrust in a mini pod, and they were so inspired that they've chosen rather spitefully to take this week off, have they not? So that we can't do it again.
It's outrageous. How dare they have a holiday? They have too many holidays. So we'll go with that. But so we've decided that we'll take a look at the at what's going on kind of otherwise electorally, and kind of see what we think of those. You had a bit of a kind of a list as to what we wanted to look at. Ian, what was the?
Yeah, so I guess we look ahead to May the 7th.
Yes.
Many people looking at that national picture. Did the world Starmer's survive this week? But come May the 7th, it'll all go horribly wrong for him. So I guess we should start by looking at these were almost the elections that never were.
Yes, indeed. And I've got some kind of lovely details to go through. But I guess to build the picture, shall we talk about how elections normally work in Portsmouth?
Well, yes, the old 3 in 4, isn't it? Yes, yeah, and it's one of the ones which most people who followed the pod know we like to give a decent overview, which is 42 councillors split into 3 chunks of 14 wards. So we elect on 3 out of 4 cycles, and then we get a year off. When those who are not part of a unitary authority, so if you cross the border into the Badlands of Fareham or Havant or Waterlooville, you get an election every year, and on the 4th year, you get to elect your county councillors. But because we don't have them, we get a year off, which is what we were meant to be doing last year.
Yeah,
and we did.
Yes.
We had a year off.
Well, we did, and so if you kind of look at our fallow year, were, so for example, 2014, 2015, 2016, our fallow year was 2017, although there was a general election that year.
There was.
And then the next fallow year was actually due to be 2021, but it was brought forward to 2020 because of COVID. And then the next fallow year was indeed 2025. So we didn't have any local elections in Portsmouth. We weren't due to have any local elections in Portsmouth. Anybody screaming bloody murder on Facebook or in leaflets claiming otherwise is maybe talking about somewhere else instead of Portsmouth.
The facts and the honest truth get in the way of a screaming rant on Facebook, say I, as do some of the posters that we have larks with on Portsmouth politics. It is fair to say that Hampshire were due to have elections last year.
Yes.
And because of this year was going to be the great mayoral election, they punted them down the road a year and said, oh, well, you can get to serve an extra year and we'll do it next year. Because it was meant to be the great mayoral combined authority of Hampshire. Is it now Hampshire and the Solent?
Yes, yes, Hampshire and the Solent. Yeah.
I'm not sure why the good people of the Isle of Wight don't merit a mention. It's like Hampshire. Oh, and God, those other folk. So yes, rather disrespectfully, they are, and the Solent. But obviously, we covered that, having secured 2 of the mayoral candidates. The rug was whipped out after there was indecent haste. We must. Ah, no, we'll postpone them. So
December 2024, the government announced the whole kind of LGR and devolution thing. Then in early 2025, they offered basically nine councils were offered to delayed their May 2025 elections, and then in December, the government asked 63 councils whether they wanted to delay their elections due in May 26 and punted those mayoral elections out to 2028. And in January, so last month, they announced the 29 councils that were indeed given the delay, of which Portsmouth was not one, because Portsmouth didn't ask for it. And as Steve Pitt quite openly and quite energetically in his normal style in I think December's full council pretty much said thanks but no thanks, but there is a statement as to that effect on the council's website.
Well, Hampshire were the same, weren't they? They said, well, thanks awfully.
Yeah, but
no, we'd better have a bit of democratic process. But I think when you were doing some of the research, there are a number of councils who've said, well, it looks like it's going to go horribly wrong for us. So in the interest of democracy, we'll delay it for a while, which means I think there's well over 100 councillors that will end up serving a 7-year term before they face the electorate in 2028.
Yes.
Or in 2027.
Yes. Yes, but there was I think it was, I forget what the number now was, but there was quite a significant number that would now not be, that would essentially be getting away with not having elections for 7 years. Which it's quite the extension, really.
Yeah, to a 4-year term to get a 3-year extension, but none of that applies to us. So all of you ranting and roaring about hiding from the voters and hiding from the democracy, none of that is going to happen here. We are on course, May the 7th, 14 wards up for grabs, and we will be covering it every step of the way. Those of you who have listened to the podcast for some time know we always we offer every candidate the opportunity to come on to talk to the electorate. If we get, I think we've used if 2 or 3 or more are gathered together, then we will put a hustings on for that ward.
Mm-hmm.
And it is our hope, once again, in a balanced way, in that I think the most we've ever done is 7 out of the 14. So we always hope that all 14 will rush forward. And then we hope that won't be the case, because that would mean we'd have 14 separate podcasts to cram into a month.
Yes. So I'll put some stuff out later on with regarding kind of the deadlines for the timelines for registering to vote. But I think essentially voters need to remember that they'll need voter ID to be able to vote. You can get free voter ID from the council. All of those details will be available on the council website. I'll share the links in the descriptions later on. But yes, so Portsmouth, there's one councillor up from each of the 14 wards. There's 3 councillors in every ward in the city. So there's one out of each of the 14 wards. So there's 14 councillors up for re-election in May, and we have good information that none of the incumbents are standing down. So everybody that is due to re-stand is actually standing again to be re-elected. No one is kind of standing down to kind of make way for someone else. You can usually get hints of that from political campaigners, social media. The existing councillor will be introducing you repeatedly to, this is the hardworking campaigner for insert ward or community here, and you're seeing none of that. And we've had whispers on the quiet and confirmations from the major political parties involved that they will. So of the councillors that are actually up for re-election, we've got 4 from the Liberal Democrats, we've got 5 from Labour, we've got 2 from the Conservatives, and 3 from Reform, and that includes Joe Standen, who was only elected in the by-election in October. So where do we want to go to next? Do we want to touch a bit on the transformation of the rise and perhaps kind of petering out of Pitt? Do we go to that next?
Well, I think we've got to do that, haven't we? Because if we look back at Last year, Joe Standard, who is now the group leader for Pip, was standing in Baffins as a Conservative candidate, and Pip was standing a a contender against him. And I guess the probably the big question is going to be, if we look at all of the councillors who were elected as Pip, and I think I'm correct in saying we had were we up to 10, 8,
So
9?
they got up to 9. I can very, very quickly run through
Yeah,
a bit of a Pip timeline if you want. So
that would
George
be grand.
Madwick formed Portsmouth Independence Party in August 2021. And then in the May 2022 election, Pip secures 3 seats in the local elections. The following May 2023, they secured a further 3, taking them to 6. And then in May 2024, they secured a further 3, taking them to 9 seats, which actually once there was some things with the because at one point they were the opposition, and then the Labour Party group went back up to 9 because there were some investigatory suspensions. So there were some councillors that were temporarily suspended from the Labour group. In July 2025, George Madwick and Raymond Dent defected from Pip to Reform. And then in September 25, Brian Madwick stands down in Paulsgrove because it was more than 6 months before the next election was due. That meant a by-election needed to take place. On the 16th of October, 2025, Russell Simpson, Chris Dyke, Derek North and Matthew Cordy defected from Pip to Reform. And then on 23rd of October, as we've just mentioned, Joe Standard wins the by-election in Paulsgrove, taking Pip to 7. Sorry, taking Reform to 7. And then in November, Jason Frasackley of the Liberal Democrats in Nelson defected from them to Reform, taking them to the 8 that they currently have.
Yes, and I think there are two councillors left in with the Pip sticker on them, and I guess we have to touch on first. Pip always when it was formed was about the best person for the job, non-political alignment, broad church, and there is an element of almost all of the broad church. Fairly soon after George Madwick had led the group leader of Pip, headed to Reform, their political views all fell in line with Reform, and now they are on 8. And I guess we have to ask ourselves about whether Pip truly is independent, or one of our sharp-eyed observers noted the group leader for Pip out delivering leaflets for Reform in Cosham, which suggests a certain lack of independence. And interesting, when I look back at last year's results, Reform only stood 2 candidates in the locals, and perhaps we should have noted something then in the fact that Portsmouth Independents did not stand a candidate in either of those wards. So it'll be interesting to see whether the 2 Pips remain as Pip post the election, because neither of them are up for grabs, or whether they have the same Damascene Road conversion and move across to Pip, which could that would clearly make Pip the second largest party. Reform the second largest party.
Yeah, and just to kind of give a bit of context, I know we're kind of moving into really kind of talking about how the which party has got how many seats over time. In 2021, the Conservatives had 16, the Lib Dems had 15, Labour had 7, Pip weren't around them. And there were 4 independents, and Reform weren't around then either. And that's now gone to a point where in the May elections in 2024, down to 4 Conservatives, 19 Lib Dems, 9 Labour, 9 Pip, 1 independent, Councillor Cal Corkery, in Charles Dickens, and now because of that defection of Jason Fazakerley and that by-election in Paulsgrove, now it's 4 Conservatives, 18 Lib Dems, 9 Labour, 2 Pip, 1 Independent, and 8 Reform. So it's it'll be interesting to see kind of what further developments there are. I won't read through it, but I'm just popping onto the screen kind of the image of the vote share by percentage across the city since 2021 to 2024.
And I think, again, those who have followed the history would say that effectively the Conservatives dominated the north of the city, and since the rise of George, who was the first of the Portsmouth independents, and it would be fair to say that it was a massacre of the Conservatives across the whole of the north, almost the whole of the north of the city, that has been seen the rise of Pip / now Reform. So they've been much more active in the north, very successful, unseated a lot of fairly high-profile Conservative councillors on the way. So now, I guess, it leads us into that discussion as to, how much are the locals going to be affected by local politics, where obviously the Lib Dems have done very well, and will there be this kind of populist surge of reform that the polls were suggesting?
I mean,
but I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I mean, did you want me to very quickly mention a couple before we get into a bit of more of the nitty gritty? There are a couple of other elections that are coming up that are sooner that might be kind of more
might give us a bellwether. What have we got to look at?
So
first?
there's the Gorton and Denton by-election due to the Labour MP Andrew Gwynn standing down due to significant health reasons. He was only recently elected in 2024 with just over 50% of the vote. So there's a when you look at the polls, there's a fair tussle going on between Labour and the Greens as to actually who is more competitive against what appears to be a pending reform victory there. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. But a bit closer to home as a council by-election in Shirley Ward in Southampton, they're having their second by-election in 2 years in the same ward. Their councillor in 2024 was Satva Kaur, but she stood down because she got elected in the 2024 general election as the MP for Southampton Test, and then the Liberal Democrats won that election with George Percival being elected, but he's now standing down because he's received a promotion at work that takes him out of Southampton. So despite only being elected in October 2024, he's now standing down, and so both of those elections are taking place on the 26th. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how they fare. It's fair to say that the Labour government are getting a bit of a kicking at the moment. Will that translate into an issue for local politics? Will the residents in Shirley resent the fact that they had a by-election so recently and are now having to have another one, and perhaps punish both the Lib Dems and Labour? Who can tell? But we should wait and see.
And I think Shirley is actually a good bellwether for us. Obviously, at the national level, we'll see what occurs. But I think, if Shirley was traditionally a sort of Labour Lib Dem seat, then that's kind of how a lot of the south of Portsmouth looks, doesn't it? In terms of, two lead parties. So we will keep a close eye on that one. So if we look at that national picture, and it's difficult when you look at Portsmouth as a microcosm, isn't it? Because for many, many years, the south was Labour, the north was Conservative, and basically the council, whilst it was mostly in no overall control, the Lib Dems were usually either the largest party or close to being the largest party. So we are quite a complex tapestry, which is why it's a good news that you have such insightful folk like us to to weave your way through it.
Steady insight, steady on. Poring over, listening to whispers and having quiet words with people and looking at poring over spreadsheets and looking at stuff. So I think there's some kind of things that you might kind of gather, and there's some interesting kind of comparisons. So should we start kind of whizzing through the wards in Portsmouth? Should we go do that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's. Hang on, hit the wrong button.
Press the wrong button.
Oh, there we go. Right, okay. So Baffins. I don't know how much kind of detail you want me to go into here.
I guess
but
who's up?
So in Baffins we have. Sorry, I've now got. So in Baffins we've got Abdul Kadir for the Lib Dems up, and when you look at the last election in Baffins, the Lib Dems were just under 1,600 votes, way above anybody else.
Yep.
And although actually Pip had made an insurgence or an appearance in 2022 their actual votes went down to 310 in 2024. So the Conservative vote is what last in 2024 was 539. So you've got quite a significant kind of gap between kind of what's going on. So unless there is some sort of massive ground shift, is there that massive kind of ground shift, that political earthquake from reform that would close that larger gap? Do we think that's likely to happen?
Well, I guess if you add, and people often make the mistake of adding the Conservative and we're going to put the Pitt vote in with the same bucket as that. You know, if you look at those two added together, it's 800. You know, Abdul Kadir 16. You basically, it's such a significant swing. I mean, Baffins has always been a kind of a little bit of an enigma politically, because I think most people who kind of know the area, you know it's very strong in sort of trades, and most people have thought, that it would be an easier win for the Conservatives than it would have been for the Lib Dems. But it's returned Lib Dem councillors all the time. I think this one might be a bridge too far for for Reform to turn this one over. So I think Abdul might be safe for another 4 years.
You're predicting that will be a Lib Dem hold.
Definitely.
Is that what you're saying? Okay, that's lovely. Okay, so I'm trying to remember what I actually said on my own notes. I can't believe that I came up with anything different, to be honest with you. So.
I mean, we've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, and you've never backed against a Lib Dem yet, so I can't see you starting now.
Is this really no? So yes, I did indeed have that as a Lib Dem hold. So I'm updating my little chart as we go so that we can look at them in the end. But quite a good turnout as well there. But seeming kind of a bit of a curtailment over the last couple of years, gone down from like 33% to 29%. So a thing of interest. So we move on from Baffins.
Yep.
Central South Sea. So 2024, the Labour won that with nearly 1,800 votes. The Lib Dems 1,300. Everyone else kind of sub 250.
Charlotte Gerrard very strong there, wasn't it, last time, the Labour group leader?
Yes. So you've got two Labour councillors in the ward. You've got Charlotte Gerrard and you've got George Fielding, and you've got Lib Dem Susie Horton, all with very, very strong personal votes and support. But it's George Fielding that's up for re-election this time. How much of a dent do we think some of the dissatisfaction with the government's performance so far will translate into denting that in Central? What do you think?
Well, it's a macro question, isn't it, as to how much does the national picture play a part? And I think that the challenge I think for Labour is that the Labour government has actually alienated quite a lot of Labour activists, and I think they actually might suffer the same challenges that the local Conservative councillors kind of faced in 23, 24, 22. There was a bit of a bump about vaccines, and then really just everybody fell out of love with including some of the local Conservatives, with the Conservative Party as the ruling government. They just were sick to death of the scandals and the sleaze and just the, and it really hurt the local
Endless
party.
psychodrama of
Yeah, yeah,
re-electing your prime minister.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You can just see that collapse from 16 down to 4, and we know, because we've done this for a while, that almost every local councillor works really hard at their job. Yes, there have been a few who swing the lead and pocket the money, but the vast majority of the people who do this role actually work really quite hard. So I see that collapse from 16 to 4 being much more about the national influence over the local elections. I think this could be a ward where I think Labour might struggle, but I just don't see Central South Sea as being a place where reform is really going to get a foothold. It's very far south, isn't it? Which isn't traditionally where PIP or reform have ever really had much of an impact.
No, I mean, they had a bit of a showing, didn't they, in when Lee Tyndall stood in Eastney and Craneswater. He had a fair crack there before standing elsewhere and then getting elected. And he's one of the two that have remained with PIP.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to kind of see. I think for me, there's two things at play here. One is, how much will the national picture depress the Labour vote?
Yep.
And how much of the Labour vote will the Greens get if the Greens put in a candidate there? Now, I've had a whisper that the Greens are putting a candidate, like last time, they're putting a candidate up in every ward. So the critical thing was, how much campaigning will they do in the ward? I think that could kind of make a difference. But I think the national image, the national picture, and whatever residual vote that the Greens will get, just because they'll have a candidate in play anyway, and there's a fair bit of Labour vote drifting to the Greens. I think the Lib Dems will take the ward.
And that's where I've got to, Simon, if I'm honest. And a word for our local Greens. I love them dearly, but I just think they're, and forgive me, but their political strategy is awful, hopeless even. They're a small party. They try and put a candidate in every ward, and they seem content to get 4%, 5% of the vote in every ward, and they do the same again the next election. If I was the Greens strategist, and it's very unlikely they'll give me the job, but if I were,
it will be a shock appointment for everybody concerned if that happens.
It will be. It's like, the love child of Morgan McSweeney and that funny little Geordie fella that the Conservatives had suddenly appears as the Green strategist in Portsmouth. But focus on a couple of wards, put your energy in, and go for some of the smaller wards you might win. So, yeah, I think they'll take a couple of 100 votes here or there. And like you, I think this will be a Lib Dem game.
Okay, interesting. So we're no disagreement so far. Charles Dickens, then here's the one where the turnout in 2024 was under 15% in the ward. It's the ward with the lowest turnout across the city anyway, and it basically was 4% lower than kind of it normally trends. Having said that, it's staunchly voted Labour for the last 4 elections. It's got...
No, it hasn't.
What?
They elected Cow.
Oh, have I got a problem? No, I beg your pardon. Sorry, because Cow is 1 point on the... Sorry, out 4... 3 out of the last 4
Yeah.
elections. My apologies, Cal. I haven't put a little dot for the for the independent, because I've done it as a line graph, because for stress reasons I can't do bar charts. I don't like bar charts.
Lib Dems and graphs, eh?
So so my apologies. So 2024, Yinka Adeniran was re-elected with 900 sorry, no, she wasn't last year because she's upstanding this year. Sorry, 907. 910 was what Cal won with in 2023. But will they kind of retain that? Will Reform make decent inroads there? Will someone else?
No. Well, Yinka's got a strong personal brand, which I think helps her. I think Charles Dickens is one of those strange wards that if you actually go back further in time, Charles Dickens was a kind of hotbed of UKIP. That was it was been a sort of UKIP Labour thing, mostly Labour, obviously. This is one where I think most of the parties don't bother. Reform have been very vocal online. Their campaigner for Charles Dickens, I've noticed their presence from probably 6-7 months ago. So I think this is one where they're going to put in some effort. I actually think, going back to my friends the Greens and my free consultancy of political strategy, I think this is the one ward where if they put the effort in and motivated the student vote, this could be where this was the only one I would give them a sparrow's fart in hell's chance of doing anything in, but I don't think they'll bother. I actually think this is going to become a Reform game.
Okay. I agree. This is terrible. Is your strategy this year to try to even up that I've got closer to being correct than you have over the last 4 years just by...
Well, we just for the purposes of the viewers, we've not compared notes before, obviously. So, we are in a position where I am calling first, so I'm not following your lead. Let's move on to Drayton and Farlington.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we've, as you say, we've not shared notes. Should we do Copner first?
Oh, go on then. Yeah, no, love Copner.
So Copner also about a couple of percent dip in their turnout. Turnout was 29% in 2024, but Pitt won it with 1,111, whereas 2023 they won it with 1,391. Back in 2021, the Conservatives were strong there with 1,636. So Labour are kind of middling with around kind of 640 last year. Everyone else is kind of sub 200. So I can't see Labour really investing here because they're defending 5 wards, and I think they'll struggle with that. So I can't see them at basically doing anything to overturn any kind of dip based on the national picture here. So I think the question is, will that PIP support transform to Reform support, and will they remove another Conservative from the council?
Well, Ben Swan is up for re-election, and Ben is a big fan of Ben, a hard-working Conservative councillor. I mean, Ben had the option. Ben has shared with us and has given us permission to share that he was invited to join Reform many months ago, and has politely declined their offer, as he considers himself, he's much more aligned with the Conservative Party and values, which I think, for me, I think shows a degree of integrity, because ultimately, I think if Ben had gone to Reform, I think he'd be guaranteed a win in the upcoming election, because I think he's got a strong personal brand. He works hard. He's been the councillor there for a number of years, and I think he'd be a slam dunk. The rise of Reform over the last couple of years and the collapse of the Conservative vote, I desperately want to. If there's one result that I would really like to see, it's Ben retaining his seat. I think he will suffer a narrow loss to Reform.
I agree in both parts of that assessment. I think it's going to be closer than anybody would probably like. I think it's going to be a close one. I don't think
Yep.
it's going to be an easy win for Reform, but I do think they'll win it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only other question is when we look at local parties, the Conservatives have really only got 2 wards. They've got 2 wards to defend, haven't they?
Yes.
And I don't think they would have any realistic aspirations of gaining anywhere else. So, I mean, I think that the hope for Ben is that, the Conservatives, the local Conservatives that remain, are going to be pouring all of their energy into Copner and Drayton and Farlington. And I will personally be keeping my fingers crossed for Ben, even though I am not biased. Brackets, but in this case, I am very biased.
Well, no, he's been a very good friend of the pod, and we certainly wish him well. Unfortunately, politics is that brutal business, isn't it? Where as we've said many times before, it's a very, very weird interview process.
And
an
it is
end
that
of period assessment.
Yeah, and it is that interesting. It is that interesting piece where you look at it, and I think everyone would be, if Ben was wearing a light blue rosette, I think he'd be guaranteed a win. And Joe was wearing a dark blue rosette in Baffins last year and was unsuccessful, but wore a light blue one in Paulsgrove and absolutely romped home, back in October. So, we've got that as a Reform gain.
We have indeed. So next up is Cosham. So where we both are.
Yep.
So last year it was a pip win for Derek North with 1,149 votes. Labour taking just over 1,009. But
our Portsmouth North MP Amanda was the Labour candidate.
Yes, she was the candidate for the council elections in 2024. We've got 2 Labour councillors in Cosham, Mary Vallely and Ashgar Shah, and it's Shah that is up for re-election. The Conservatives in 2024 were distant 640 odd. No one else really basically in play whatsoever. Again, how much of that PIP vote would is transferable to Reform? I think this one is going to be close because Shah has a strong personal following and a personal brand, and he doesn't do a lot. To be fair, he does next to nothing of the national politics or even actually of the party politics. Yep. He's very much a not that I'm saying anybody else isn't, but his focus, what he talks about a lot is his community focus and what he does in the community, rather than talking about these are the talking points that I've got from the party HQ. So I think this is going to be tight. But what did I have this down as? Do you want me to get mine first? Or you're going to do yours?
Yeah, so I'm not going to be seen to follow. I've got this one very close as well. I think this is very similar to Copner. We've got a hard-working local councillor who works very hard, but unfortunately, I know that Reform have been hitting Cosham very hard. The amount of recycling I've had to do of their leaflets tells me that this is an area they're targeting, and I think because of the National Party influence, I think Shah's going to come up short, and I've got this one down as a Reform gain.
Okay, to make it a bit of interesting, then I pretty much had this as a too close to call, but I'm going to say that Shah's going to retain it.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, now we can get to Drayton and Farlington.
Yes,
you're too eager to get there.
I was too eager. Simon Bosher, the incumbent Conservative group leader, and I mean, Drayton and Farlington, we never used to bother spending any time on this at all because, I think if you go back a few years, the margin was, I think they would get something like 65% of the vote share. So
yeah, in 2021 there was just under 2,000. The majority was just under 2,000.
Yeah, which when you look at that as a majority, when you look at somewhere like Charles Dickens, where the winning candidate got 900 votes. It gives you an idea of just how blue this was. Reform got much closer than I think anybody predicted last year, but it remained Conservative. I think Simon is going to do enough to keep this one.
122 votes in it last year. Sorry, not
Yeah.
last year. Last time round in 2024. I do also agree that that's going to be a Conservative hold. It would be quite the event of the night if Reform were able to actually take out the leader of the Conservative group. That would be quite something. But Simon is a very experienced and very well known and respected councillor in his ward. So I agree. I think he'll take it. But this is going to be another tough one. But having said that, in some ways, only having 4 wards to defend means that if you've still got activists, you can. It's relatively easy to concentrate them because there's only 2 of them up, so you've only got to divide by 2. So we shall see. Turnout consistently good there. 2024 35%. Who's next? Eastney and Craneswater. So right down to the bottom of the city again. Lib Dems the last 3 elections here. The Conservatives had it in 2021. Although a slight dip in the vote for the Lib Dems in 2024. 1,156. The Labour were the next closest at 1,017. PIP were at 725. So 300 off, or 400 off of actually the winning Lib Dem, and the Conservatives went down to 600 odd in 2024.
Funny old ward,
so,
isn't it?
Sorry,
funny old ward. Eastney and
it's a bit of a weird, but it's also experiencing a bit with the turnout. In 2021, it was just under 45%. 2024, it's gone down as low as 38%. So.
You used to be nailed on Conservative.
Yeah.
An area where it wasn't PIP that's kind of, consumed the Conservative. This was kind of the blue island at the bottom of the city. So who's up this time?
So it's Matthew Winnington.
Yeah.
So given that he'd spent a period where he was when he restood. I forget which year it is now. He'd spent a year basically out, and then fought his way back in. So if he's still in it to win it, I think he will do. I don't think it will be the Labour that are fighting for the spot, because I think they'll have enough problems defending the wards they've got. The question again is
too far.
How much of a Reform presence there could be that far south?
Yeah, too far south for Reform for me. I think disaffected Labour voters are liable to go for Matt Winnington, well-known, kind of fairly high-profile member. Lib Dem hold.
Okay, me too. That's okay. So there's only one ward we've got a different view on. So do by all means, guys, let us know in the chat what you think. I'll pop on the screen. There's a QR code to our newsletter. You can sign up to that, and there's actually a poll, so you can take your own swing at what you think the results will be. But if you're following on YouTube, please do make sure to give us a subscribe or a like. Likewise on Facebook, give us a follow. Keep commenting. We'd love to kind of hear what you've got to say. So Fratton is always a tense one, a bit of a tight tussle between the Lib Dems and Labour. Up this time is former Lord Mayor of Portsmouth, Tom Coles, for Labour. You've got David Ashmore and Stuart Brown, who are the Lib Dems here. Lib Dems winning in 2023 and 2024, the latterly of which 824 against Labour's 728, and the persistent Jacob Short from Pips keep fighting away after on his second year to to try and kind of see it. Will this be the year that the national picture does for Tom and sees Jacob elected to the council?
Yeah, this one's a funny one.
Assuming he's the candidate, we don't know yet. That's not been
I think
confirmed
we
yet.
could bet our left leg to an acre of Swedes that he will be the candidate. And my view is that this one is a conundrum for me because Jacob for me, tireless all year round campaigner, but I just don't see him as a reform person. I just don't. Everything about how he campaigns, how he conducts himself, how he speaks, how he engages. So it is going to be an interesting one because if he does end up standing with a reform rosette, it's I think it's difficult because I'm not sure that he will take all of his personal brand vote with him because I think in terms of that values led approach, I don't see Jacob. I just don't see Jacob and the reform brand sitting well together. But I could see Tom Coles, um, although again, very charismatic. Did a great job as mayor. I could see the Labour effect hurting him. I haven't got a strong position on this one because traditionally been a good ward for the Lib Dems. I think if reform didn't exist and Jacob was standing as a PIP candidate, I think he'd probably win it. But I'm not sure that standing as reform is going to help him. And I'm actually going to sit on the fence on this one because I could see this go. I could see it being a 3-horse race, and I could even see the Lib Dems sneaking through to take it. But it's too close to call for me.
Okay, you're going to completely bugger up all of my calculations if you don't give me an answer.
Yeah, that's good. I might do that then.
So I'll mark you down as Lib Dem then.
I'm going to say
Okay.
Lib Dem gain.
Okay. Okay. I've got it as I think it's I think the interest. I agree with all of those points. I think it will be a tussle between Reform and Lib Dems, but I do think the Lib Dems will gain it.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's interesting.
Okay. So
I should have known you never vote against a Lib Dem, do you? No, that's cool. Keep going.
Well, I mean, I didn't last in 2024 in the locals. I voted for someone who then deserted that party, which I certainly wouldn't have given them my vote if they'd if I'd have known that.
Yeah,
but
you
there we
and
go.
Me both.
Yes, Fratton turnout 2024 was just under 25%. Again, a bit of a kind of an edge downwards. Will there be an outbreak of apathy or interest in May's local elections? Will Reform do what George Madgwick was historically very, very good at doing, at getting disaffected voters to either register if they weren't already or actually just to bloody vote?
Well, at this point, should we ask the question: Is the fading of George into the background? I'm still not sure.
For viewers, that's because George has stepped down as leader of Reform Portsmouth, and Joe Standen is now the leader of Reform Portsmouth and the council group.
But I do wonder how much George's personal brand, really strong social media following, lots of groups set up, George very much politically astute. I don't know. I still don't know how much that could hurt Reform's potential in May. Because at one point, if I go back 7-8 months, I could have made a decent case for Reform winning 10 or 11 wards, and I don't think I'm going to do that now. So, time, as they say, will tell. In the interest of time, where do we go
Hilsey,
next?
2024, Pip had 1,493 votes. The Conservatives were the next highest with 533. So, essentially, Pip had turned what was once Fortress Hilsey for the Conservatives into basically a decimation of the Conservative vote. Everyone else is even kind of further away. I can't see this being anything other than a Reform hold for Russell Simpson, who's the once PIP and now Reform candidate up for. Well, we assume candidate because he hasn't been confirmed, but they are restanding.
No, very, very active local councillor. He's going to win. Maybe this could be Peter Williams' year. But inside joke. So Peter stands every year in Hilsey as the Lib Dem candidate, and I would say he's not come close to winning it yet, but someday his dream might come true. But yes, yeah, that's a reform hold
Yeah.
for definite.
So Milton, what do we think there? This is where Lib Dem leader of Portsmouth City Council, Steve Pitt, is up for re-election. The Lib Dems in 2024, 1,817. The previous year, they'd got 1,872. Labour turned 1,552 in 2023 to 949 in 2024. Are we seeing an earthquake here? Are we seeing a surprise kind of reform
Nope.
appearance?
No, I mean, to be fair, that's where and I haven't seen their names come up. The Zimmers, one of them stood in Milton last time around, and they didn't make much progress there. I can't see anything other than Steve Pitt,
Mm-hmm.
Lib Dem, retained in Milton.
Absolutely. I don't think there's kind of any real chance of anything else happening, but you should never be complacent, and I'm sure the Lib Dems won't be.
Yep.
Nelson. So this is the ward where Jason Fazackley is up for re-election. He defected from the Lib Dems to Reform late last year. What are we saying here? 2024, it was 903 for the Lib Dems. The Lib Dems have basically won the last 4 elections in this ward. However, in 2024, PIP were 687, and in 2023 they were 169. So they completely turned the engine on. Will the voters don't historically respond well to defections, and I don't think there's enough of a gap there to return a reform candidate in the guise of Jason Fazackley. So I think the Lib Dems are gonna. I mean, technically it's a hold because it's against when it was last up for election, but I think the Lib Dems will take it. What do you think?
Yeah, this one is going to be tight, and it's how much do people know Jason and then kind of turn against him for his defection. I can't, Nelson is close enough to the north that I think that I actually think this will be a reform game.
Ooh.
I think if you go through, and again, if you go through Nelson, lots of flags on lampposts, lots of that sort of noise. I think this one is going to be a reform game.
Okay, interesting. We're getting there. The end is in sight, mate. So, Paulsgrove. Do we even need to bloody ask?
Let's just skip over this. Joe is going to win by an absolute bloody landslide. He won in October.
And my chart here only has the regular elections. It hasn't got the by-election results on it. But I don't think there's any chance whatsoever in anybody else other than Joe winning in Paulsgrove. St Jude. So this is where you've got Judith Smythe from Labour up for re-election. She had 1,360 votes in 2022, but last year the Lib Dems won it with 1,266, and Labour had 1,221. So a close battle there. This one has over the years kind of backwards and forwards between is it 2 Lib Dems and 1 Labour or what? So at the moment it's 2 Labour and 1 Lib Dem. So what do we reckon here? Here again, a drop in turnout by about 5% from 2021.
I think this is one Labour is going to pour a lot of energy into, because I think there is that element. Again, I think this is a ward that they could win, They could lose. This is another one of those wards where I think if the Greens were going to target any wards, it's these last two, St Jude's and St Tom's, that they should think about. I actually think that the national effect will have an effect on Judith, and I think this one will be another Lib Dem game.
Yeah, I think it will be tight. I think it will all depend on how much of the Labour vote is depressed and how aggressive the Lib Dems are going to be, bearing in mind they are defending 4 wards themselves, whereas Labour are defending 5. But yeah, I've also got that down as a Lib Dem game. So,
Well, I think the other thing that people don't, and again, I think there is one of these things where there is a misunderstanding about the Reform voter, and that there is a belief quite often that Reform only ever takes its votes from the Conservatives, and I don't think that's true. I think there are a lot of Reform speak to a lot of the white working class poorer areas, and part of their narrative is that the major parties have overlooked you. And so I don't, I think we always think about sort of, the Labour voters going further left and heading to the Greens, or, going to the Lib Dems. But I think, it's only got to take for Reform to eat a couple of hundred votes from that Labour base in these poorer, the more socially deprived areas, and I think that is going to have an impact. So that's why I'm calling a Lib Dem win here.
Okay, so last but by no means least, St Thomas Ward to Old Portsmouth.
Yep.
Currently incumbent is Mark Jeffery from the Lib Dems. Again, there's a vote share kind of since 2021. Sorry, vote turnout has gone down by about 5% since 2021. But the Lib Dems have won the last 4 elections in this ward. It used to be a 3-way fight between the Conservatives, Labour, and Lib Dems, but this now seems to be quite a healthy Lib Dem stronghold. What you?
Yep. Not going to change. Lib Dem retain. Let's have a look at the final scores.
Okay,
then.
So bearing that in mind, if we go to what would happen if our predictions were correct, then I've got some. Sorry, I just need to sort something out because. Because you've leaned forward again. It's complete, and for some reason I
should lean back.
Bloody move it now. Right, stay. Okay, you pain in the ass. Right, okay. So on our reckonings, based on what we've said, we then come up with. I'm just going to double check that they actually all add up to 42. So your predictions result in 21 Lib Dems, 4 Labour, 3 Conservative, 11 Reform, 2 for Pip, 1 Independent, and 0 Greens. My predictions result in 22 Lib Dems, 5 Labour, 3 Conservative, 9 Reform, 2 Pip, 1 Independent, and 0 Greens. So
now
I appear to have been kinder to both Labour and the Liberal Democrats.
As is your way. But that is the magic number, isn't it? Because at 21, it's still no overall control. So the Lib Dems needed 1 vote to retain the leadership. But at 22, that is the magic number. And if that's true, then it turns orange and they can rule like the gods they all wish to be, without the help of any other parties.
Yes, that would give them overall control for the first time since 2018. So so that would be quite.
Yeah, we will watch with interest. And as always, dear listener, there are only ever 2 types of prediction: lucky and wrong. And if history tells us anything, we are more likely to be the latter than the former, but there's still a lot of mileage to go, potential scandals, all things could happen in the next 3 months. Keep listening. We will try and keep you up to date with everything that happens. You've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And I've been Simon Sansbury. Please do join us next week where we get into the sexy subject of potholes, parking and roadworks. We're graced with the presence of Portsmouth City Council Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation, Peter Candlish, who'll be helping us understand how all those things work, what the challenges are and what the council's actually doing about them. And then the week after that, we'll be doing our coverage on the full council at the end of February, and then the following week we've got Darren Sanders, the Cabinet Member for Housing, coming on to talk to us about all things housing. So if you have any questions that you want us to put to either Councillor Candlish or Councillor Sanders regarding either traffic or housing, please do email studio@pppodcast.uk. If you scan the barcode on the screen, it will take you to our website. You can go to our website, which is pppodcast.uk, and see kind of all of our full links there. But otherwise, kind of message us on social media. We look forward to that in-depth digging deep on the roadworks now that Eastern Road's been reopened. That'd be good. That's good news.
Allegedly. Till next week.
So we'll see you then. Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube. Find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, YouTube, Threads, LinkedIn.